Hi, I'm Scott Flowers with Cloud Ninjas. Today we're here to talk about Gigabyte R183-Z95-AAD1. Let's get going. Hey, thanks for stopping by today to learn a little bit more about the Gigabyte R183-Z95-AAD1. Do us a favor, if you find anything that helps you in this video, click that like and smash that subscribe. All right, what's up? This video is going to be a general hardware overview. We're going to cover CPUs, RAM, drives. We're going to talk about how many PCIe slots there are and how many network cards you can put in there. We're going to talk about the supported operating systems and a bunch more. So let's just go ahead and dive into the fun stuff. Alright, so if you've watched our videos, you know that I like to start with CPUs because to me that's the most important thing to start with. It's really kind of the first choice when you're looking to build a server, and then you can build everything else around that. And I love AMD, so I like to do AMD videos. So there are two CPUs inside. It's a SP5 socket, which means it takes AMD Genoa 9004 and AMD Turin 9005. Now, this was originally set up to be a Genoa system, and since it is the same socket, you have to update the BIOS if you want to be able to put in Turin, but there are two Turins, and we'll put them down below, that you cannot put in because they have too high of a TDP, so just too high of a TDP as a whole. It's 500 watt and higher. Is not supported, so that it is what it is, but you can support the bulk of the Turins. And people ask us all the time, hey, what CPUs do you recommend? And really it kind of depends on your application, your budget, and do you want more cores, more speed, so forth. So we put up a little chart that we come up with, and that's going to be our low end, our value, and our high end, and it's just some CPUs we recommend. I'm a big fan because I like the speed personally. I like the 9274F and the 9474F, as well as going to the Turin side of that, and that's going to be the 9275F and the 9475F. We keep a good amount of those in stock, so if you're looking for a quick build to ship out with those products, definitely email us at sales@cloudninja.com and we can get you a quote really fast. All right, let's talk about memory. It takes DDR5 memory. There's going to be 24 DIMM slots inside, which means 12 DIMM slots per CPU, which is pretty nice because that means there's only one DIMM per channel, which helps with not clocking the memory down too much, which will happen depending on if you're using single rank or dual rank, which is a whole other story. But let's talk about what sizes are supported. Well, you can support as low as a 16 gig, a 32 gig, a 48 gig, a 64 gig, a 96 gig, or all the way up to 128 gigabytes per DIMM, which means with 24 DIMM slots, that's 3 terabytes of RAM. So yes, 3 terabytes of RAM is going to be the max you can put in, which is, again, pretty incredible when you think about, because back in the day, if you put in 64 gigabytes, that was like, man, this is awesome, right? So 3 terabytes of RAM is pretty incredible. The speeds you can put in is going to be 4,800. Technically, you can put in the 5600 or even the 6000, but they're just going to clock down, so there's no real point or sense unless for some reason you're getting a better deal on 5600, then hey, let it rip. But 4800 is going to be the max speed. And one last important thing to note that I almost missed is what type of RAM can you use? Well, this is ECC Registered. When you get into DDR5 world, load reduced is gone. Goodbye RDIMM. So ECC Registered is going to be your real choice when you get to the big boy systems. There's still some of the ECC unbuffered and non-ECC when you go like to some of the desktops or workstations, but those are not going to be what we're talking about. We're talking about the big boy epic procs. So you're looking at ECC Registered DDR5. All right, let's talk about storage. So that is definitely one of the interesting parts of this box as a whole. You'll see in the front there is 8 2.5-inch small form factor drives, and there are 6 E1.S drives. E1.S is a newer style of drive that will become more prevalent as the future comes out, or at least that's what the manufacturers seem to think. The forecast is showing that basically the E1.S's are going to be 25% of the market in upcoming years. I'll be interested to see if that's actually the case, but that is something you should be seeing more and more coming out, just because if you look at it from the scalability standpoint, you can put a bunch of them in. They're very, very small, right? So that's very helpful if you want to stuff in a bunch of drives into a 1U essentially, right? All right, so let's talk about the types of drives that you can use, and then let's compare them as a whole. So you have a SATA solid-state drive, you have a SAS solid-state drive, an NVMe solid-state drive, a SATA hard drive, and an E1.S S that we just talked about. Those are going to be the 5 types of drives, and I'm sure if you put in a SAS hard drive, it'd probably work as well. It doesn't show it on the spec sheet, but I'm sure it would probably work. You would have to have a RAID controller, but a hardware RAID controller, but we didn't test it out, and 2.5-inch SAS drive just really isn't prevalent these days. 3.5-inch maybe, but 2.5-inch is kind of dead. But anyhow, let's go back to the comparisons here. So for a SATA solid-state drive, you're going to get 6 gigabit per second. For SAS, you're going to get 24. For NVMe, you're going to get 32. Let's stop there for a second. You might say, how did you get to 32 there? Well, they are Gen 5, so you can put in a Gen 5 drive into the backplane. So it takes U.2 or U.3, and Gen 5 is supported. Now, if you want to put a Gen 4, you can do that as well. That's going to be 16 gigabit per second, so it's going to be, you know, half the speed of the Gen 5, even though the performance doesn't necessarily come out that way, but it'll be about half the speed. And then you might think, okay, well, if I'm getting 16 from a Gen 4 drive, should I put that in, or should I put in a SAS drive, because that's 24? Don't let the numbers fool you. You will still get better read and write and lower latency from the Gen 4 NVMe. So if you're wondering, hey, should I just pop in a Gen 4? I have an old one laying around. Yes, you can still use it, and it is a great option, right? Now, for the SATA hard drive, you're going to get 7.2K revolutions per minute. It's a spinning disk. It, you know, spins around. It's a mechanical device, so it's the slowest speed by far. And for the E1.S, you're going to get 14 gigabit per second. So still, you know, very fast overall, and still will beat a SAS solid state drive when you really break down the performance. But those are going to be your speeds overall. All right, so let's talk about scalability. For a SATA solid-state drive, you can get 7.68. For a SAS, you can get 30.72. For a NVMe, you can get 61.44. For a SATA hard drive, you can get 2 terabytes according to Gigabyte spec sheet. We played around and threw in a 4 terabyte, so yes, a whopping 4 terabytes for a SATA hard drive, which is just another reason why we recommend the solid-state drives. Not only better scalability and performance, more reliable, but you also have the E1.S, and that will get to 7.68 terabytes per, so that's going to be your overall scalability. And then I go back to what do we recommend and what do we pick. NVMe is going to actually have the best price, which we didn't get into all that, but NVMe is going to have the best price, NVMe is going to have the best speed, and NVMe is going to have the best scalability. So to me, NVMe is the real winner, and that is what we would recommend as a whole. All right, so sometimes people will run into this question, and they'll ask us, hey, we're only putting in one CPU, and we want to know what is controlled by the first CPU, which is called CPU 0, and then the second CPU is called CPU 1, which I really very strongly dislike that. It should be CPU 1 and CPU 2, but different story. So CPU 0 is going to control the E1.S drive, so those 6 drives are controlled by CPU 0, and then the 8 NVMe or SAS SATA drives are going to be controlled by CPU 1, so those are going to be how everything is controlled. So again, if you're only putting in one CPU, you will only be able to use your E1.S drives. All right, that brings us to M.2s. So there are 3 M.2s on the motherboard, so internal M.2s. The downside is they are Gen 3.0. So it would be nice if they were 4.0. Hell, it would be nice if they were 5.0. But it would be really nice if they were 4.0. But they are 3.0 M.2s. And again, if you want to know what is controlled by what CPU, CPU 0 controls the first one, and then CPU 1 controls the last 2 M.2s. And one other important note on the M.2s is that they are 22110 or 2280, so you can put in either size, and you can max out at technically 8 terabytes per if you're putting in something like a WD Black, so you can put in 8 terabytes on each one of them. All right, last but not least, let's throw up a little fun fact chart for SAS4 for all those who are interested. Let's talk about RAID. We're going to throw up a nice little handy dandy chart for you, and it's going to show a bunch of RAID options. It's not going to be every option, it's just going to be the options that are on Gigabyte's website, and it's just going to show you stuff that is officially compatible. If there's something you like to use that's not on the chart, hey, drop a comment down below for the other users. You're going to see a lot of Broadcom on there. Broadcom's still very, very heavily used for NVMe RAID in particular. You also can do RAID obviously for SAS or SATA drives if you want, but I want to note, you'll notice at the bottom we put Grade on there. Very, very big fan of Grade. We are officially an authorized partner for Grade. They have several really great solutions. Essentially what they've done is they've tied an NVIDIA GPU and and they have their software packaged with it, and it is the best NVMe RAID solution out there, in my opinion, better than the Broadcom solutions. So something definitely worth checking out. And if you're interested, hit us at sales@cloudninja.com. We'd love to help you out. All right, well, let's talk about the PCIe slots or the expansion ports in the back, and then we'll work our way into the supported network cards. But it's kind of nice to know how many PCIe slots you have so that you know how many network cards you can put in. So there are 2 full height, half length, which is just another way of saying high profile slots in the back. They are PCIe 5.0 by 16, which is very nice. So you can technically use a Gen 5 M.2 if you put a one of those little converters in there that you could just put into the PCIe slot. Then you could technically have a Gen 5 M.2, which would be very nice. And the front ports are also PCIe 5.0, which is nice for the 2.5-inch drives. But if you're looking at using, let's just say, like the T705, which is a much faster speed than any of the U.3 Gen 5s that are out there right now, then that's a good way to potentially go about it. But then, of course, it limits your network cards because there are only 2 PCIe slots as a whole. But you do have 2 OCP 3.0 slots, which are also Gen 5 by 16, so that's nice. So you could technically put in 2 OCP 3.0s and 2 PCIes, so a total of 4 network cards if you're not using one of the ports for RAID or for one of those converters that I just talked about to use an M.2, but those are your choices. All right, well, let's dive deeper into networking as a whole. So on the back of the motherboard, you're going to have 2 1 gigabit RJ45, which is another way of saying Ethernet ports. You know, that's helpful, but since they're only 1 gigabit, that's probably not super helpful, but that's at least a starting point. So that does bring us to, well, what speeds, what interfaces, what's supported? Well, on the interface side, you have RJ45, which we just mentioned, and is another way of saying Ethernet. That's what you use at your home. So if you're buying this, say down the line, or even right now for a home lab, Ethernet would be the way to go. If you are using this in a data center, you might be using SFP, SFP+, SFP28, QSFP, QSFP+, QSFP28, QSFP56, QSFP 112, OSFP, or even old school fiber channel. All of those are the supported interfaces, and that brings us to, well, what speeds are supported? Well, you have 1, 10, 25, 40, 100, 200, 400, yep, all the way up to 400 gigabit, which is insanely fast, but that's where we're at nowadays, especially if you're using GPUs, which this isn't what I would recommend as a GPU box, but if you're using GPUs, that's where you start using some of those big boy cards right there. And then you also have on the fiber channel side 8, 16, or 32, so those are your supported speeds. Well, let's not forget our old friend power supply. Yes, nobody really cares about them, but there are 2 hot swap 1600 watt power supplies in the back. They are 80 plus platinum. They're going to be 100 to 240 volt, but those are going to be your power supplies. All right, let's go over the supported operating system. So on the Windows Server side, you're going to have 2019, 2022, or the newest 2025 that just came out. Or there's a bunch of great Linux options, which I'm a big fan of. You have Ubuntu, you have Red Hat, you have Fedora. There's a ton of different Linux options, and if there's something that you like, hey, drop a comment down below. But those are your supported operating systems. If you made it this far, hey, click that like and smash that subscribe. And if you're looking for any custom-built servers, we do Gigabyte, Supermicro, ASRock, Asus, Tyan, HPE, Dell, Lenovo. We'd love the opportunity to help your data center or your home lab. Please email us at sales@cloudninja.com. That's sales@cloudninja.com. Thanks for stopping by, guys.